In this lesson, we'll finish up the case by adding a pivot to our handle and then also adding an emblem using NURBS. So let's jump back in here and let's give our handle a little bit of a pivot down here. And to do that, we're just going to bring in a primitive cylinder. And let's go ahead and kind of bring it up and we'll rotate it 90 degrees in the Z. And then we just want to kind of bring it up in here in the right spot. Let's take the radius for this down a little bit. We can also take the height up a bit. And I just want it to kind of penetrate in from the side. So maybe something like that. If you want to add a little bit more detail to that or even detail the opening there, you can do that. I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller and kind of move it up here. Let's take our subdivisions down a little bit. And let me move it in just a bit. Take this up just a little bit more. Let's add a subdivision along the cap. And then I'll go ahead and select those polygons and let's just extrude those straight out. And let's select the edge of that. I'm just going to kind of scale it in to create a little bit of a bevel. All right, let's go ahead and take this, duplicate it. We'll move it over to this side. We'll rotate it around. Stick it back in. All right, now we'll take this handle. We'll take both of these pieces. Let's delete our history. Let's freeze our transformations. Let's group them together. We'll call this handle. And let's go into side view. I'm going to use the D key, or you can use insert on your keyboard and translate. And I'm going to go ahead and move the pivot point. So I'm going to move it to the center of those cylinders that we just built. All right, so now when we come in and select that group, we can rotate it from that pivot. So we'll go ahead and kind of rotate it down so it's in a resting position. Now I want to create the emblem up here. We'll do this with a slightly different piece of geometry. Let's use NURBS. So we'll go ahead and grab a NURBS. Let's grab a sphere and we'll bring it up. We can go over to the creation node and change the radius, so we'll make it a little bit bigger. Now you can see automatically this is really, really smooth. That's one of the great things about NURBS is its smoothness, although we're going to have to deal with it in a slightly different way. We're not going to be able to extrude polygons. We're going to have to kind of cut and detach things. So let's start by creating a sort of hemisphere. And to do that, we want to detach it. And we can right-click and choose isoparm, and we can either select an existing isoparm or we can just drag anywhere along this surface to select an isoparm here or a place where we want to cut it. So if I just want to cut it at this isoparm, I can just select it. We'll go to Surfaces to deal with NURBS, and then we'll go to Edit NURBS, Detach Surfaces. Now you can see we have two separate pieces. You can go ahead and get rid of that bottom one. Now for this one, we want to shape it a little bit. So we come in here and we can go maybe to the top view, and I can begin to kind of scale this down a little bit, move it up into position, kind of bring it down a little. Now we don't want it to be quite so tall, so we'll go ahead and scale this down, so something like that. And then we can begin to take this down, push it into that opening that we have there. Now I want to add a little bit of detail to this, and to do this, instead of extruding, we're going to be adding basically edge loops, but we're going to be adding isoparms, but to move them, we're going to have to not use the isoparms, but use the holes. So if I want to create kind of a ridge here, I'm going to start by just inserting a few more isoparms. So I'll drag this where I want the new edge. I'll shift, drag another one out there, and then let's create a few right in here. So we've got all of those dotted lines letting us know that this is where those isoparms are going to be located. So we'll go to Edit NURBS, Insert Isoparms. That's going to give us those isoparms. Now to actually move edges, we can use holes, and then we can grab holes and move those around. You can see it doesn't correspond exactly with the edges, but we can use these to create the kind of detail that we want. So we'll kind of raise this up a little bit. Let's grab this one, sort of pull it down to kind of sharpen up this area. If we want to, we can come in and start to add additional isoparms in here. Okay, and then, if we take this hole and kind of move it closer, I'll make it a little bit sharper. And then if you wanted to take those holes in the middle, you could kind of move those down a bit. Okay, and kind of move this up just a little. I do want it to be pretty flush. And then I can come in and I'll just scale it down a little bit in that direction, so there's a little bit of a gap there. And then we have a nice little emblem to go on our case. Okay, so keep that in mind. NURBS are a nice way to go when you're building objects. They're not used a whole lot now. They're used in some automotive applications. There are some studios that use them still, and they're great for building up objects. Certain objects are easier to get with NURBS. There are certain things that come with NURBS that you can take advantage of in finally getting your output. So even if you don't use them all the way through to the end, you can still utilize the NURBS tools in Maya to build up geometry that even will eventually be a polygon or a subdivision surface. So keep that in mind as you work with NURBS in Maya. Okay, so I think we've got most of the modeling done here. So let's take a look in the next lesson at kind of cleaning up our scene. We'll talk more about our hierarchy and things like that, and then we'll talk about our assignment for this level. So go ahead and do that next.